I have to credit my wife, Jen. Basically, we wanted to take control over our food, building a farm as well, learning how to farm using permaculture principles.
Hello, and welcome to the Permaculture Vine podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Jones of Vine and also of Pencher Pond Permaculture. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Cormac. Happy to be here. Very happy.
And we're very happy to have you at Vine. So, Mike, could you just give us a quick 60-second introduction just on a quick background?
Sure. I'm here. We actually moved. We consider ourselves climate migrants from the Philadelphia area. And on this very hot day up here in Vermont by the Canadian border, it's still chasing us up here. So basically, we wanted to take control over our food and our privacy, et cetera. So resilience, I guess, in general. So we moved up here and sold our stuff in Pennsylvania. We renovated a house in Pennsylvania, sold it, moved here, built a house, almost finished building. It's been 5-6 years now at this point. Been doing it by myself. Building a farm as well, learning how to farm using permaculture principles. So we have an orchard planted and several things we don't have our berry bushes in yet. We're not making money on the farm yet either. So we're at this sort of stage where we've been doing kind of the same thing for a while and just kind of hoping to start making money from the farm, from all our efforts of the last really 8 years. So sure that was over a minute, but
well, we're not too strict. Could you just give us when did you, so let's take it back to the start of your journey. So when did you first discover permaculture and how did you get into it?
I have to credit my wife, Jen. It was on her lips before it was on mine. She reads a lot more things than I do generally, out there in the world. And she discovered permaculture. It was in line with what we were doing. We kind of started like Rodale Institute, organic kind of mentality before we had permaculture. So we were kind of close. We were there. Both had plans like from the beginning of our marriage of like probably moving to Vermont, and indeed we did. For those purposes, it's an agricultural place. So we sort of combined what we learned online with then, we bought the land here about 11 years ago. So before we built the house and moved here, we had it for about 6 years to observe. So it gradually became like kind of an organic farm to a permaculture farm by the time we actually moved here. So we changed our name to Pencher Pond Permaculture. And then we finally got a PDC. I actually got the certificate, but she was with every class. So we both know the same things from Verge Permaculture about 3 years ago. So I've been a certified permaculture designer for 2.5 years. And I'm finally having time to actually design my own farm because I've been doing designs for, professionally for a little while. So yes, permaculture, that's a word that's the way I thought about it initially and the way I think about it now, 7 years later, is a little different. The principles are the same, the basic ideas, but I think all the cultural stuff on top of it has changed in my own mind. Plus I've changed too, just kind of living on the farm for a while.
Right. So you're in Philadelphia and your wife brings you this, the concept of permaculture. Were you thinking already about getting the property or did the property come first? And you said it was organic first you were thinking of doing?
Yeah, the property came first. Our mission to farm and grow our own food and kind of have our own privacy and our own power or be responsible. Power and responsibility are almost the same thing. To have our own, just to be responsible for our own thing. My wife comes from more of an organic kind of organic gardening background, health. She's a nurse. She's thinking about health. She does her own research. She's very intelligent. So she sort of led me in that way. Whereas my background was more, I was physics. And at one point when I was really young, I wanted to build a spaceship to control all the stuff that went in my body and kind of get away from Earth, which has all of its problems. So I was a little crazy, but we different ways.
Say.
Yeah, right. Oh, there's so much. I just don't even tell you. But anyway, there's so we kind of both had the same basic idea. I actually made when I was 20, I was really kind of into herbs, Earl Mindell's Herb Bible. I went through, made lists and learned about the herbs. My my approach to life, unfortunately, whether it's permaculture, plants, physics, whatever it is, it always starts with a spreadsheet with me. So I have a sort of linear way of thinking about things, and I try to be um, more open-minded and listen to other people's really good ideas. Um, so yeah, so when she presented to me, I mean, it didn't happen like that. It wasn't like permaculture. It was just we kind of picked up on it and then started working that direction.
So you have your so when you so you've got your property then up in Vermont, you're living in Philadelphia, and you have to make that transition then. Is it right? And how do you go about thinking about that and preparing that for someone looking to leave the big smoke of Philadelphia and go to the more? How did that process go as a couple? No, sort of like changing. Like how did that timeline go?
First, I'm going to start backwards. First of all, if you're not united with your partner, this is not an easy journey to take. And we've gone through stress, and we're kind of in a period of stress now, and kind of like deciding what to do. And this is the after before the before, but yeah, the you have to be united together. So which we have been. So what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just as a couple, how did you make that transition from the city out to the country? Like, how did you plan that? A spreadsheet?
Well, it was actually there was a really really awesome spreadsheet. But anyway, yeah. So we started in Pennsylvania. We moved in together. We got married and moved in together, and then we were in a 1914 bungalow. It's almost like a Sears home, and we were renting it, and then we bought it, and then we immediately started renovating. So I'm like basically on YouTube learning electricity, learning carpentry. I knew nothing. So I'm cut off in the air conditioning, by the way. So I'm going to start. I've already started sweating, just to explain what's going on. So we started renovating the house, learned all that, renovated the house, and it was in an area in Philadelphia. It was like a kind of a good neighborhood, not a great neighborhood, but a good neighborhood, so that we could resell the house. We were able to build value into the home, sell it. While about a year or two before we moved, so it was a big plan. We decided, all right, yes, we're moving to Vermont. And then we decided, well, where in Vermont do we need to move to? And this I used a spreadsheet for, of course. Just had a list of, eventually it came down to just 10 properties, had all these different parameters, the acreage, where it was, et cetera, all this different information. This is before I knew permaculture, so it wasn't that detailed, but it was a lot of things we didn't want. We were thinking about climate change, so just moving north was a big thing because it gives us some time to have some cool. We like the fact that Vermont, even Vermont's laws are really strong right now. They could change in a second. This was at a time of political turmoil in the United States while we were doing this, where you could see a regime could just change really quick. So we decided that the laws of Vermont weren't that important, although they're very good. But that really what's underground was the most important. If the laws change, could somebody suddenly frack? We were really worried about fracking. This is 10, 12 years ago. So fracking was an important thing. Distance from cities for nuclear attacks. That was a big thing for us. So you don't want to be too near a city. So Montreal is probably the best target. That's not going to be on the first round anyway, That's 2 hours away. So that's really our only nuclear threat. So we kind of went through that. I put that on the spreadsheet. If you imagine all these things, the price per acre, et cetera, et cetera. So we did that, and we decided we're going to move. We decided we're going to finish the renovation on the house, and we're moving very specifically. We basically boiled it. We came up a year before, and we did research on. And we met with a realtor actually who lived in Canada on the border. We're right up by the Canadian border. We're 8 miles away. So we went with that real estate agent. I had a list of 10 properties. The land we're on right now was at the bottom of the list. It was actually number 11. I just kept it on because it was my 11th choice. But the realtor that morning, and this is why, like, connecting, you can do all the spreadsheeting you want, and you be clever ape all you want to be, but as soon as you start talking to other people, you learn way more, like in a few seconds, if you talk to the right person, of course. So we got lucky. So she's like, I had all this thing. I was really looking for acreage and some water. More acreage, the better, basically. My wife was thinking of more sophisticated things. Jen was thinking of, the neighborhood and the other things and, all these things. And eventually, so we met with the realtor. We came up here. It was a big deal. We drove it to 8 hours from Philadelphia, came up here. And right in the morning, the first thing she's like, there's a property I have to show you before, because I got a list. So we're going to go look at this. She's like, well, before we do that, let's just go to see this property. So she whisked us here right away. She's like, this just came up for sale. It has this view. We started marching up the hill, and there's this view of mountains over a pond with mountains. It's a good view. So, we knew we were in a special place. It's also a pristine place. It hasn't been a farm since early 70s. So there was nothing here. It was all overgrown. There was no buildings. We built everything that was here. So anyway, we ended up buying the land. Jen, I remember her marching up the hill and just looking out at the view. I took a picture of it. I was just like, oh. There was a place in Cabot, Vermont, where they make the cheese right near the cheese factory that had more acreage, and it had this stream and everything, and it was cool. And I wanted that one, but very quickly I saw that this was the better property. Plus, I knew Jen wanted it, so I'm not fighting that battle. So I'm very, very glad that she was my nickname's Checkers, hers is Chess. So thank God for that. So she sees ahead a few more moves than I do. And fortunately, we're here. It's the much better land. So we prepared, we worked our butts off renovating the house. We learned how to sell a house. Because we were worried about climate change and just don't know when the economy is going to collapse. We're like, all right, we need to sell it. But we still made money. We wanted, but we didn't go up too high, and we didn't want to wait too long. Plus, you need to start building in the spring in Vermont, because you don't have much time to get that building covered in. So it was all part of starting right away. So you want to sell a house in the spring and fire away. And I would give that advice to anybody who's doing it. Because if you're building something, you sort of need to get it done before winter based on where you're at. And if you're in the tropics, then it's probably all year long, who knows? But so yeah, there was a lot of preparation. There was hard work, and there was, most of all, that we were united, and we made a decision. We found a piece of land. We bought it ahead of time. About 5 years before we built. We had 2 5-year plans. First one almost right on time. We made it. Second one, now it's a 6-year, 7-year plan. It's getting the house finished is harder than I thought. It's mainly because we decided on a really high standard for safety reasons. I sprayed the whole house and did all kinds of things that most people don't do. So it's taken me longer. It's also my first house. I've YouTubed this whole thing on my, as I'm doing it. And so it is possible, but I don't know if I would do it exactly the way we did it. We're not done. So yeah. Yep.
Right. So you're at what point then? So you've moved now. You observe for 5 years, and you're up. And then at what point do you say, does permaculture come in and you say, right, I'm going to get a PDC now? I think that's the best idea to start studying.
Well, by the time we bought the land, which is 6 years ago, by the time we were actually on the land, all we were doing for the first 5 years, we were collecting apples and cidering. We would squeeze them on the farm and then bring the juice back to Pennsylvania, ferment it, and have cider. So we did that every single year. We still did that. We missed 1 or 2 years, I think. But coming here, we already knew it was already permaculture before we started building anything. So we already had permaculture in mind. So actually 8 years ago, also in one of those trips, we built a shed. I prefabbed it in Pennsylvania. I designed all the parts of it so that it would fit in this specific U-Haul. So it was very design tight. And that way I could just assemble it really quick in Vermont, because we would drive up here in our Prius. And, it's 8 hours and only have a few days of vacation to strike and get things done. The sweat has formed. Look at this. It's beginning. I told you. So, Yeah, so it was permaculture. So we planted our orchard with permaculture in mind, with guilds, et cetera. Not that they're not all overgrown, because we can't actually physically get down there and make enough mulch to keep up with it. That's part of the later story. But yeah, we did. So we did. We planted our orchard as soon as we could. So that's about 8 years old now and starting to produce mature fruit. We planted 4 apples, 2 plums, 3 cherries. I'm sorry, yeah, 3 pears, 2 cherries. And then we have sea berries. We're going to do sea berries, and we have some elderberries in that orchard. We have a lot of other things. We have an orchard in the back. We have crops in the front now. And then we're planning to do our pick your own berry bushes in our main field. That's been hayed forever by actually the richest guy in town. He's been coming and taking our hay and giving it to his cows. And so it's been very convenient for us because we didn't have to mow the lawn. So it didn't go to forest. So we just kind of let it happen. And he brings us manure sometimes, a truckload of manure. So it's, it's mutually beneficial, but that time's over now because we're going to plant our field with hundreds of berry bushes, I believe, or at least over 100 berry bushes, I should say. So yeah, and all with permaculture in mind. Guilds in the forest, though we're actually switching to kind of more native guilds. If something like, oh, there's milkweed there and dandelion, and so just leave it. So more and more we're like, as opposed to just tearing out a weed, we'll be like, oh, what is that? Let's go learn about it. And sure enough, it's probably like, don't tear it out. So our guilds are weedy, but they work. They're good. I mean, they're very native and they're very strong. Whereas when in designs, I've really thought about like each plant and what its functions are and how does it work with the other plants and stuff. So it's kind of like my mind's been changing. Permaculture, yeah, it's changed a little bit. There is no one definition of permaculture. Maybe it's principles.
Right, your PDC. How did you said you done your PDC at Verge?
Yep.
Do you want to tell us why you selected that PDC and what was your experience with Verge doing that?
Yeah, so we doing everything ourselves. So about 3 years ago, decided maybe, the house was taking too long and they needed to make money to let some pressure off of Jen, who's been the main financial. That's been her, her pillar has been the finances. So I was thinking, maybe take this permaculture knowledge and really take it to the next level in an organized way and actually get a PDC, and then maybe do designs and make some money. So yeah, we decided to do that. And Verge is they're the northern permaculture company. We had been watching their videos on YouTube, so we were already familiar with them. And it was a natural choice for us. We're zone 3B technically. With climate change, we're already 4A. I don't even consider us 3. So yeah, Verge was excellent. We got lucky too, I think, with Verge. It wasn't just because it was northern. They're not that close to us. They're in Alberta, so they're still 2,000 miles away, but they're in a very similar climate zone. And they were experts on greenhouses, experts on water capture, and really they really have a nice program there, and very nice and knowledgeable people. So yeah, and now today Verge is, in the permaculture world, they're up there. They have some really good guests on their PDC. So yeah, I was very happy with Verge. I'm glad we went there.
So then, how did the PDC change how you looked at your own property then? Did anything change majorly, or was it just more the same?
I am a stubborn person, and I am autodidactical. So I learned things myself, and the old me was worse than the new me. So I think it was more on Jen's prodding to do it. I wanted to, and I'm very glad I did, because it totally changed my mind. I didn't have the cultural perspective. How did it change the land and the actual plans that we had? Not that much, honestly. We weren't doing that bad. We realized, having lived here already, been on the land, like all the big ideas we had in the beginning, we're like, okay, how old are we? How much money do we have? How much time do we have? So we've just learned to scale back. But we have water collected up on the hill. We have so in that pumps, our whole farm system is pressurized with water that's up at 90 feet. So it's about 40 psi. It's perfect hose pressure. Spent $1,000, made hoses all over the farm where we have our crops, etc., down to the orchard. Everything has a hose right there. There are like 12 hoses on the farm, all coming off of spring water, all by gravity. All I have to do is run up the hill, climb up the hill every 275 gallons, because there's a big IBC up there. So that's one thing. The thing, and not much changed, honestly. What changed in me was understanding how important permaculture is for the whole world. So we kind of had our own little perspective on YouTube, and when you get that and you see all the things that have come, like a PDC really does give you that bigger perspective, and makes you feel a little smaller, but also just fine, because it brings in all these other cultural aspects. Ties in things. Of course, there's things I learned that I didn't know. So much about rainwater, about greenhouses, and the greenhouse I built before I was taking Verge. But actually, I did all right. I did okay. I mean, I have a degree in physics, and I researched the hell out of things before I commit. Not that I don't make mistakes. I made the greenhouse that we have attached. We have an A-frame, big old A-frame. Have a greenhouse attached to that A-frame coming out here. Then the wall's on an angle because it's facing south, and that's the latitude. So it's all the windows are perfectly facing the winter solstice sun, because they heat barrels inside that are filled with water. This is like the physics end of things here. But Mr. Physics also brought that wall down, that roof, that heavy roof, onto I made a design change at the last second when we got here, and many design changes. I put it on a 2-foot knee wall and just assumed that was okay. Long story short, Thanksgiving, the first year after the house was built, 3 foot of snow up on the roof. Didn't know how to clear it. Was busy. Didn't know anything. And so we went out for a walk one day, and sure enough, I see the wall doing this. So it was in a slow collapse, which would have just brought down the roof, torn a hole in the side. It just would have been the end of everything for me. It just would have been disastrous. So I was up all night, got the equations, designed these buttresses. What I had to do is get off of that nasty knee wall and connect the load directly to the foundation. Did all that work, got up on the roof, knocked off all this snow in chunks. It was frozen, 3-foot things of snow rattling off the roof down below. So I got all the way up. We had a wood stove pipe there with some struts to support it, a big stainless steel pipe coming out of the roof. And I was, I kind of worked, that was the only thing coming out of the roof. I'm like, all right, I could always, that's my base. Sure enough, I get the last chunk, the front chunk. Now remember, it's 37 degrees, 37, 38 degrees. It was melty. And I'm like, oh, this is great, because it was sliding off the roof. Just, once I broke it free, it's like an iceberg calving. But the last chunk, I knocked that off. And sure enough, the chunk I'm on, the last chunk, starts sliding forward too. I'm like, oh shit. So I grab onto the pipe, which was there. I'm sliding off the roof, which is 16 feet. That's all I got. I grab one of the supports to the pipe. Now the pipe breaks and comes down on me, and I just defend myself. And that actually stopped me. So now I'm almost on the very edge of the roof. It's slippery. It's all melty. Everything's all, it's a metal roof. All I have is these little screw heads. So I pull back, I get the thing. I actually fixed the pipe on my way up, and kind of temporarily I had to come back and tape it. And then it took me 10 minutes to crawl with my gloves hanging onto the little screw holes, to get my way back. Anyway, that was my biggest adventure. But that was what Rob at Verge calls a type 1 error. That's when you design something at the last minute, you don't think about the forces. So, you got to watch stuff like that when you're building a house yourself, because there's no regulations up here. So you can get yourself into trouble. Almost did, but honestly, the house has been up 6 years now, and it's going through some storms. It's fine.
That was some adventure.
Yeah, that's I'm not a good storyteller, but that's my best story.
It was a good story. Right. So post PDC then. So you finished your PDC then, and what's next for you? Are you already thinking about how the farm's going to make money, or when
Yeah,
does that start
that's
coming into it?
yep. Oh yeah. So now that we still house still has to get finished, we have a number of schemes for making money. Um, and that's basically going to be there's an air we're planning on doing an Airbnb because we have that beautiful view. The house is really cool with the view. We know how to put in some Adirondack chairs and a fire pit. So I think there's really good potential for that as a stream of income. We're also going to build a farm stand down at the road. So we're up on a hill and a 400-foot driveway down to the road. We can see it from there. So we can develop a business and start selling. I don't know that we're going to sell produce as much as we might sell plants, more of a nursery model, selling plants, selling exotic plants like sea berry, things that people don't know in this area, because we're competing with farmers that are like way more experienced and they have hundreds of years of family experience farming. So we need to do something that's a niche product that's a little different in this area. So sea berries and hascaps and that bringing in that permaculture knowledge that we have. Plus, and I've always learned from spreadsheets. So something that's now since the PDC, I got a job working for a large permaculture, company, a design company, learned a lot just by doing designs and studying other people's lands and going through it all. But in the meantime, I developed a database for all the plants, database that could do tricks on the spreadsheets. I'm kind of an advanced user, so you can actually do a whole design. So I spent a lot of time building that database and programming it so that it would work. It's a very custom permaculture kind of approach to things. So I've been maintaining that, and I still have probably 20, 30 users on that now. And so that's informed a lot of my knowledge that I have, because I'm not really a plant guy. I was a physics guy, and then in the last 2.5 years, I've become a plant guy as a lot of the major construction on the house has come down. It's given me a little bit of time, but then I still did it my way, which is the spreadsheet way. So I realized like I had a lot of kind of like knowledge. I might know the scientific name and know some things about the plant, but I wouldn't even recognize it. I'd be like outside with a real plant person. They'd be like, "Oh, it's Asclepias syriaca." I'd be like, "Oh, that's what it looks like." I mean, that's just milkweed. But there was other examples. I can't think of it. But I'm just like, oh my God, I don't even know what it looks like. I have this like data and all this. So it's just this different approach. So now I'm becoming more of a plant guy. I'm more outside. My goal is to know everything out on my lawn, out in my woods. I want to be able to identify each plant locally. I've retreated to just, if I could at least understand my land, my own land, that would be a great thing.
Right. Well, that's just the database. Have you a name for it?
Oh yeah, so call it Gilda, Guilda. I was a big fan of Gilda Radner when I was a kid from Saturday Night Live. She lived near where we were in Pennsylvania. This is before she died, obviously. But so Gilda, I just thought of it naturally. And you think about what's a guild? A guild is a collection of entities that work together in a sort of a closed system. So in permaculture, we call the plants beneath the tree the guild, the support plants of the tree. And they're a guild because they have many interactions between them. There's a network of functions and stuff. So it forms a nice guild. So thus Gilda.
So you said you'd 30 users. So, for example, you've given me a copy today. How would I go about using that? Now, is it for designers?
It's
explain just how it works.
Yeah, this is just a tool for designers, for permaculture designers. And it takes the approach of the food forest. And at first it looks at, Gilda, you want to sort of start with the trees and work your way down to the guild and the understory. You can do other gardens too, a veggie garden, et cetera, herb garden, et cetera. But permaculture, the food forest, is really the big exciting thing. So it starts with you pick a tree for the zone. It has the zone, I'm zone 4, you're zone 8, Cormac, USDA? 9, you're zone 9. So it'll let you pick any plant, but it'll then give you a warning if you're using a plant that's out of zone for that property. So it's aware of the zone. So you basically would pick a fruit tree that you would like, an apple, a
Yeah, apple's a
Gala
good one.
apple or a Fuji. And then Gilda will like take all the information and be like, oh, okay, well, here's ones that will also pollinate with that at the same time if you want to pollinate. So you can pick out your pollinating groups and get your apple trees in. Then you do your plum trees, apricots, peaches, etc., jujubes based on where you're at, banana trees if you're in the tropical area. And then you can pick like nitrogen fixing shrubs that will feed nitrogen to each tree gets a nitrogen fixing shrub if you want. And then it'll go into the tree guild itself. And then you can pick berry shrubs like some blueberries or blackberries. I don't know how good an idea that is. Blueberries, haskap, something like that. And then there's layers of guild functions. You have your dynamic accumulators, your insectary plants, your ground cover, your nitrogen fixers. You have aromatic plants that keep bugs away, make it smell nice for humans. Pollinators would bring in the pollinators. If the plants are going to reproduce, you're going to need bees and butterflies and birds and bees. So it'll do all that, and that has about 30 different functions that you could choose. But in general, I think a basic guild are these 6 functions: dynamic acute. I call it DIGNAP, 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 dynamic accumulator, insectary plants which repel and attract. Ground covers, which keep the ground moist and just kind of keeps the weeds out at the base of the plant. You're almost building you're really building a guild. You're building a guild. It's such a good name for it. Ground covers, and then you have your nitrogen fixers. We have nitrogen fixing shrubs on the big level, but you could have nitrogen fixing plants in the small thing, and this will leave nodules of nitrogen in the soil. And then you have your aromatic plants. Again, they repel not just bugs, but they can repel rabbits and repel deer. So you see kind of a security system built into the guild to repel and attract, right? Anybody who knows Buddha, they'll recognize this, huh? Come here and stay at the same time. So that's the insectary plants. And then pollinators, of course, that makes it exciting. That's what the plants want. They're moving their genetic material around that way.
Right. So for me as a designer, it makes everything streamlined. I just go on Gilda and say, right, I want an apple tree. I'm going to build an apple tree guild. And it says, right, well, consider these things. And it's just a drop down menu where I say, oh, there's a nitrogen fixture. I want that. And it basically, it automatically feeds me a selection of plants for my zone and based on function. Right, that's really good.
Based on previous choices too. It's looking at now. Remember, it's a spreadsheet, and we live in the time of a million apps that are probably a lot more sophisticated. I don't use cell phones, so I'm like a PC guy. So I design that way. But yeah, I mean, basically, it's a little rough. It's not click here and your guild's done. Although I did a version of that was fully automatic, that could literally just put in like what it thinks of the perfect guild. But nobody would use it because it's taking all your design powers away. And we live in that AI time. That's going to happen. Let's just delay it as long as we can. So I made Gilda, actually pulled Gilda back to give humans a lot more functions. So all she does, you make the decisions, and then she makes suggestions, and then you can decide from there. And then when you're done, the plant list is fully formatted and ready to go. You don't have to do a plant list. That's one of the nice things about it. It's instantly done. But yeah, there's enough information and research in it, in her limited 3,000 plants that she has. So I'm always adding new plants to the database based on these 30 users having different designs and ideas they come. Gilda, when I don't have the time I did have before with Gilda, but when I was kind of developing it full time, I would be constantly adding these plants and constantly updating and everything. And I've sort of settled on a version that's a nice compromise between automatic functions that you would hope for a computer and you being in charge of the design, the designer's creativity. The designers Gilda hadn't talked to the client, the designer did. So, so that's what Gilda will basically allow you to do.
Yeah.
You can do complete design in it. You can do a veggie garden. She has some lists as well, like let's say a smoothie garden. So for one design, I had researched like 70, 80 plants that all could go into smoothies, and I labeled them all. And so then you can just pick up a smoothie garden for your zone. So it's going to eliminate plants that won't go in your zone, and do that research and then just plunk it down. I could literally do, if I knew what I was doing, do a design in a few hours with Gilda. Not the actual physical design, but the plant list and the intellect and the intelligent part of the design behind it.
We'll have to get you to do a quick video explanation on that, and then we can share that with everybody. And
Sure.
If you like, and then if anybody wants to have access to that, just give Mike a shout. Is that all right, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe for a small fee.
Yeah. I will say we're trying to work that out. I'm trying to figure out how that. I think I'm probably, I don't know now, but probably like a per design, I'll take some percentage. That's probably the most fair model. So if it's getting used, I get paid. If it's not getting used, you don't like it, I don't get paid. So I think that's probably the fairest way.
That's right. So this is born out. We sort of, let's go back a step. So Gilda's basically born out of your design experience. Do you want to take us back to the start of, so you got your PDC, you're doing stuff in your own place, and now you're thinking, right, and you get your first design job. Do you want to tell us about your sort of development as a designer? And have you any thoughts on being a designer?
Yeah, I would not do the way I did it. The first I focused a lot on like the perfect guild, and like I was so afraid of putting a plan in that wasn't just right, and so I spent a lot of time in the beginning taking way too long to do designs because I was also developing Gilda as I did that. And it was nice in one way, but at the same time I had to develop and program Gilda, so it wasn't just a design, which is complicated enough. It takes a long time without Gilda to do a permaculture design. So yeah, in the beginning, I was also learning. I got a huge client. My second client, my first client was a quarter acre up in Toronto, Canada. It's nice, a really nice guy. We worked it out. I look at the design today, I'm like, I wouldn't do everything on it, but it wasn't that bad. But it took me, I actually did that in 3 weeks because it was small, and that's all I was doing. Like I could just focus on that. So I learned a lot doing that. And then my next design was 10 acres. I'm sorry, 5 acres, 5 acres. And that kind of blew my mind because it's like 20 times bigger. So, again, a very nice client down in Texas. And she had a daughter. So I designed a park for her and, kid-centered things. And she had this sort of sprawling land. So I did this whole food forest, and I really did a lot. She got a lot of value out of it. She's done a lot of design, but she didn't plan everything I put down in the design. So I spent a lot of time on that. And then as I've gone, I've kind of like, I've learned a lot of things. I love going into a fresh design, and looking at someone's land and seeing the possibilities. And it's always new, in the beginning. And now I've kind of learned how to spend less time thinking about that and deciding on what tools do I use? What tools do I now trust? Do I trust myself? Do I trust the plants, the numbers on the plants? Much more now. So from now it goes faster. I'm still not the fastest designer in the West, definitely not. But that's part of it because of the economic element. So I think I invested a lot of time in permaculture in the beginning, sort of donating it to, because my wife and I are here, we're on our land, but she's working. But, in general, like there's no emergency. So I paid it forward a lot. And then at some point I've been like kind of pulling back just the time, mainly because I spent 1.5 years doing designs for other people, which was great. But then I just stopped working on our farm pretty much. So now I'm back to like working on the farm and trying to balance it out with designs, but I'm not a full-time designer right now. I am a full-time homesteader though. So it's kind of where I'm at now.
Right. So I think so it's definitely a learning experience as you get better, faster, and a balancing act. I've found that same problem where that year I was designing a lot, my own garden went, and then it's like, oh, why did I let that happen? But at the time you're trying to get other people sorted, and you're meeting deadlines and talking to people. Would you give anybody advice who wanted to be a designer after they did the PDC?
there's a number of good places out there, including Vine. Actually, Vine's the best, I think. But you you can take that one approach. I mean, there's no big permaculture places that you can go. There's a few, but a lot of permaculture. I know one of my clients that I had with another company. She's now developing her own permaculture business. Small. It starts out small. So you could do that. You could look for a company that's already sort of established. It's according to where you're at. If you don't have to make money right away with it, then you can kind of build something up and sort of put value out there and get yourself a little known to get more jobs. Or if you're the type who's super social, and you live in a social kind of an area where community where you can talk to a lot of people or put out flyers. If you're really good online at like trying to get people online to do something, there's another approach. But there's no you have to build the business organically, just like a plant has to grow. So it's based on what you want to do. It's permaculture design because it's kind of a new thing. There's no real way that you can just jump in, I don't think, and just make a full-time living. It's not like you can just go and get a job. You have to sort of develop it, which you do anyway, because organically you need to learn. It's so complicated what you're doing if you want to be a permaculture designer. It's also so rewarding, but it just takes time organically. There's no quick solution. And there's probably no one solution for every person. So it's kind of like, what is your desire? What is your purpose? Why do you want to be a permaculture designer? It's not to get rich. Not that you couldn't. You could build something like in that direction. But again, most permaculture designers probably just want to maintain and like live a happy, life. So
yeah,
you're going to figure out a lot of that yourself. But here's the thing: if you have purpose, and if there's on your flagpole above you, if that flag is flying in the direction of resilience, and you want to make money by doing design and bringing trees to the world and beauty to the world, then you will figure out how to do it, because you'll always be driven by that wind, that flag flying in that direction of your purpose. So no quick advice, but just stick to it. And don't take on too much to start with. We did a little bit of that, maybe a lot of that. I don't know, but I mean,
design wise or on your farm wise.
Well, yeah, I mean, on your farm, but even design wise, like a mistake that I made in the beginning was I was working for a company that was feeding me design. So this is the model that I was in. But yeah, I was excited and I can do it. And I took on too many designs at first, and then got overwhelmed and realized, oh my God, I'm faking it until I make it, and I'm not yet making it. So it was.
I think at one stage I had 8 on the go. At various stages, and what I would warn is it was basically for me anyway. I've realized that I doing it full time, like 40 hours a week. It's probably not too sensible because there was a bit of I think we call it design fatigue.
Yeah.
Design fatigue was 8, and then it just became too much of a job. Then it was like a production line. The client still got the 1-to-1 with you, but when it's like in between the client stuff, the design and stuff, the practical side of it, and then the rendering, it just got a bit too much. So that's what I would warn against. But my advice to people: take the PDCD professional, learn digital design, and try and find a peer group of support of different designers, whether that be people that graduated. I know from graduating from Jeff Lawton's online PDC, there's a Facebook group there. I think Verge have their own Facebook groups, to the Telegram groups. Wherever you get your PDC from, try and socialize then, and that'll stand you in good stead once you graduate, because you'll be able to throw designs, throw ideas around, and see something as simple as handing something to someone. Say, go and have a look at that to see if I've done anything crazy. That peer support to me was very good. I was lucky to fall in with Crystal when I started at that other place, and that was invaluable, just having that person to bounce off ideas and just say, how is this?
Yeah, I mean that's what I had similar experience. Like my wife and I, Jen and I, we've had each other's to bounce off, but it's only two of us. Once we got into the PDC, started meeting just groups of people, and like it's your permaculture tribe people, right? It's like they're all talking permaculture. We learned so much faster. Like, we did a lot of learning ourselves, but we learned so much faster once we plugged into those communities, that the Telegram channel, and just like as much as we could talk, not just the PDC itself and the instructional material, but just meeting people that know more than you is the best thing in the world. Yeah, so yeah, take it, you kind of have to ramp it up, and you do need to need to do a lot on your own, and you also need to talk to other people at the same time. And if you find that balance between all those things, you'll have a nice workflow, and you won't get too stressed, and you'll start making money, and doing your own design, your own farm, or your own land, or your own whatever you have going on as well.
So what's the plans in the future, Mike, for Pensioner Pond?
So yeah, we're gonna do the Airbnb. I got to finish the house first. We just got a riding lawnmower that can pull and we got a trailer too, because we've been just doing it by hand on a hill, like no tractor, no ATV, nothing like that. The two of us, and it's kept us skinny and it's kept us somewhat fit, but we just can't do it anymore. I mean, we're sort of, we're at an age here. We're a little bit old. We're on the older on the permaculture scale. So we have this mower, so we can actually mow the grass, which we just did for the first time this year, and that's July grass at this point. So it was pretty rough. Spent the whole day yesterday and just got half of it done. But now we can pull around the tractor. We have a 17 cubic foot little tractor that will go behind the thing, and it'll go up our hill and do all the things. So we could bring mulch down to the food forest finally and start working on their guilds. We got a chipper, but it broke, and so I have to fix it. But I got the parts finally, so I can fix it. Then we'll have our whole system will be plugged in. So having that power now, and this might seem like a long version, but that's okay. Now that we actually have that power, which it has to replace our bodies, which can't just, we had some harrowing stories from the beginning. We just couldn't believe, like, why were we doing this? Because we were against gas, basically. Now we're not against gas. So we were going to get electric everything in the beginning. wasn't even invented back then. Now you can buy it for $1 million, and just not as powerful as it could be. Some things are good to be electric. Honestly, though, if you're going to be moving material around and doing a farm, it's okay to use gas for a little bit. So now we have some gas on the farm, which was not allowed for like 5 years. Big change. We aged out of the other stuff. So our plans going future is to control the mulch and our ability to mulch things, because honestly, that's a big part of permaculture is having mulch. We're trying to figure out ways of not having mulch or not needing it. We're land racing. We're letting our guilds not be so planned, and just kind of be like, all right, what natives are already there? What could it use? Oh, it could use a pollinator, or it could use maybe a dynamic accumulator like comfrey, chop and drop. So we're kind of like, we already kind of have the farm, and we kind of have the basic elements in place. And now we're sort of like, we got overwhelmed and got overgrown, but now we're fighting back. So we're kind of like coming back and kind of like finally finishing these guilds. But we have to make money. My wife's been at it for over a decade, sitting at a desk, and it's allowed us to do a lot of the stuff. But now as things are tapering off and things are getting done, and we're not making any new plans except for to maintain what we already have and then monetize it. That's where we're at. So yeah, that's it. Like, YouTube channel also. I have a YouTube channel, which I've neglected once I started doing permaculture design. I couldn't do any more video. I had no more time to do videos. But, I've learned a lot at Vine, structurally, and how to make a proper video. And I have a sort of I hate to say a formula, but kind of a structure for the videos. I think I can go back to YouTube. I'm going to make more organized and consistent videos versus just, I'm in the mood to make a video. Here's the phone. Here I am. Blah, 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 blah. So kind of structuring YouTube videos, I think I could get that monetized. I'm at just need 300 more subscribers and other things. And I also need to make videos so that you know what the hell I'm talking about. I'll get there. And also doing design. That's another thing to I think it's not, there's an expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So, we're building multiple income streams, nursery, based on what effort we've already put in, start making money, have the farm start paying us. But we put a lot of effort, time, and money into the farm at this point. And so it's kind of a switch in mentality. I think we were more idealistic in the beginning, a little more hippy dippy, and now, not so much. So, so now it's more practical.
At least you have the humility to admit that and share that with us. So I think that's a very important lesson to get to share with everybody. And thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, because I think if you're not realistic about it, you can get discouraged really quickly if you don't have it in your mind that, oh, I've got to do this measure. I can't just be, I learned all this stuff. Let's do this. I would love to have cows and, a greenhouse. And, it's also money. It's also, if you have a lot of money, then you could probably do a lot of this stuff, but you can never learn it that fast. You can't pay for knowledge. So you still have to be engaged with it, so money's it's one element of it for sure, but it's definitely not everything. It's your effort, your time. How much time do you spend in the garden, observing, interacting, plus what is your purpose? Is there a perfect permaculture farm? No, there just isn't. Even for a $2 million, there's still, there's still all these things that, so I would say aim high, but not too high, where you get overwhelmed and you don't do anything. Try to aim in a direction of what you think you can actually achieve and do those things. That's way better than not doing any of it. And then maybe from that level in the future, you could then do some more things from there. So
I would give the advice, aim high and do them one at a time, but I don't follow that. So
right. Neither did I. This is with hindsight.
Mike, thanks very much. So everybody, you can find Mike's YouTube channel at Pensioner Pond Permaculture on YouTube. I really enjoy his videos. They're very entertaining, and I think I've watched most of them now. And you can also find him at the Vine Permaculture YouTube as well. Mike, is there anything you want to share before we wrap up here?
There will be more videos coming pretty soon. I'm working on that. I think in general, like permaculture, people who get into permaculture, it's various people. But in general, I think we all share a certain desire to control our lives, to have power over our food, probably, maybe even our privacy, maybe even, our energy, solar panels and wind, and being frugal, and, having water up on the hill, or whatever it is, a lot of different forms. So, I don't know. I just think we live in a kind of a crazy time, a crazy world. A lot of people don't like to think about it, but it's the reality of things. So it's kind of good to be flexible, on your feet, but also realize if you're 20, don't listen to me, because it doesn't matter. You can do anything. You got your whole life ahead of you. But if you're over 20, including 21, I would say think of things in terms of your sphere of influence. There's a lot of distractions out there in the world with the cell phones and the TVs and everything. But, what can you actually control, and how much time is there in each day, and what are your goals? So that kind of thinking has made me think, all right, well, I can't waste energy here. There's nothing I can do about that. So, don't do that. What can I do? I can plant plants. I can learn about plants. I can learn about energy. I can, do these other things. So just, again, aim high, but not too high. Try to hit that target, and think, and it's going to be different for every single one of you. But I bet you what that would look like. Just do it in a way that you can actually achieve it. Like Cormac said, one step at a time would probably be the best approach. That's how I approach a staircase. I'm not like, I'm going to go up here and then down to this step and then up here, and just one at a time. So I'll conclude with that.
That's a very good place to conclude, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us today. Guys, that's been Mike Jones, and this has been the Permaculture Vine podcast. Our PDC to Professional will be out very soon. I keep saying that, but it's coming. We're nearly finished it. Basically, it's going to teach you how to do digital design. So it's like a post PDC. And yeah, if you really think you've got value out of that, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more guests that we've come on over the following weeks. Again, thanks very much, Mike, and thanks everybody else for listening. See you next week.
Thank you.
Cheers.